The morning sky over Seoul was clear and bright when the alien ships appeared. Dr. Kim Dae-ho stood at the window of the United Nations building watching the massive vessels descend from the clouds. He had been waiting for this moment his entire life, but now that it was happening, his hands were shaking. The ships were beautiful in a way that made his eyes water. They looked like they were made of living crystal that caught the sunlight and threw it back in rainbow patterns. Each ship was bigger than a city block, and they moved through the air without making any sound at all. There were 5 of them, and they settled onto the landing pad that had been specially built for this day. Dr. Kim was not alone. In the building behind him stood President Lee Soo-jin and her advisors, along with scientists and diplomats from around the world. Everyone was nervous. Everyone knew that this day would change everything for humanity. But Dr. Kim was the one who had been chosen to speak for Earth. He was the one who would represent all of human civilization in this first meeting with beings from the stars. The alien delegation walked across the landing pad toward the building, and Dr. Kim could see them clearly through the large windows. They were tall, much taller than humans, and their bodies seemed to be made of the same crystal material as their ships. They had no hair, and their skin reflected light like polished glass. Their eyes were large and changed color as they moved, shifting from blue to green to purple and back again. Ambassador Veltar was the leader of the delegation. Dr. Kim had been told his name in advance, along with information about his species, the Christian Empire. The ambassador was 9 feet tall, and his crystalline body was more complex than the others, with intricate patterns that seemed to move beneath his transparent skin. When he walked, the light around him seemed to bend and dance. The meeting room had been prepared with special chairs that could support the aliens' unusual forms. The walls were decorated with images of Earth, its cities, its people, its art, and its history. Dr. Kim hoped these images would help the aliens understand what humanity was like, what they cared about, and what made them who they were. When the aliens entered the room, the air itself seemed to change. It became warmer, and there was a slight humming sound that Dr. Kim could feel in his bones. Ambassador Veltar looked around the room, taking in everything with his color-changing eyes. Then he focused on Dr. Kim and spoke. The ambassador's voice was like music played on crystal chimes. Each word rang with harmonics that made Dr. Kim think of church bells and wind through mountains, but the words themselves were in perfect English. The aliens had been studying Earth for years, learning their languages and customs. Welcome, Dr. Kim Dae-ho of the planet Earth, the ambassador said. I am Ambassador Veltar of the Christian Empire, and I speak for the Galactic Council. We have traveled far to meet with you and your species. We bring greetings from 10,000 worlds and an invitation to join the greatest civilization the galaxy has ever known. Dr. Kim stood up and bowed slightly as he had been instructed. This is a great honor, Ambassador Veltar, he replied. We are grateful that you have come so far to meet with us. Please tell us about this Galactic Council and what it means for humanity. The ambassador smiled, or at least Dr. Kim thought it was a smile. Of the crystals around his mouth area seemed to brighten, and the patterns under his skin moved more quickly. The Galactic Council, he began, has existed for over 3,000 of your years. We are a union of civilized species from across the galaxy, bound together by laws of peace, cooperation, and mutual progress. He gestured, and the air in the room shimmered. A holographic display appeared, showing a map of the galaxy with thousands of points of light representing different worlds. Dr. Kim could see trade routes connecting the stars and vast cities floating in space. The technology was beyond anything humanity had ever imagined. We have eliminated war between species. The ambassador continued. We have ended poverty and disease. We have created a system where every being can live in harmony with others, regardless of their origin or nature. When a species joins the council, they receive access to technologies that will solve all their problems. They gain protection from hostile forces and the wisdom of civilizations that have existed for millions of years. The holographic display changed to show beautiful cities on alien worlds. Beings of different species worked together, built together, lived together in peace. There were no weapons visible anywhere, no signs of conflict or struggle. Everything was ordered and calm and perfect. Dr. Kim watched the display with growing unease. Something about the perfection bothered him. It reminded him of pictures he had seen in history books of societies that looked peaceful on the surface but had achieved that peace by crushing anything that was different or challenging. Your species shows great promise, the ambassador continued. We have been observing Earth for many years, and we are impressed by human creativity and adaptability. However, we have also observed concerning tendencies toward conflict and independence. These traits must be modified if humanity is to join the galactic community. The ambassador paused, and his eyes shifted to a deeper blue color. There are rules that all council members must follow, he said. Laws that maintain order and prevent the chaos that destroyed so many civilizations before the council was formed. Individual planets cannot make decisions that affect galactic stability. Species cannot pursue technologies or ideologies that might threaten the peace. All military forces must be placed under council control. All trade must be regulated by council authority. All cultural development must be approved by council oversight. Dr. Kim felt something cold settle in his stomach. The beautiful vision of galactic civilization was starting to look like something else entirely. It looked like a cage, a very beautiful, comfortable cage, but still a cage. We understand that This may seem restrictive at first, the ambassador said, but you must understand that freedom without guidance leads to chaos and destruction. The Council has learned from the mistakes of the past. We know what works and what does not. Every species that has joined us has found happiness and prosperity under our system. The ambassador gestured again, and the holographic display showed what appeared to be Earth but transformed. Cities had been rebuilt according to alien designs. Technology that humanity had never seen before was integrated into every aspect of life. Humans worked alongside aliens in perfect harmony, doing jobs that the Council had assigned to them based on their species' natural abilities. This is what Earth could become. The ambassador said, a paradise where humans can fulfill their potential within the framework of galactic civilization. All we require is your agreement to join the Council and accept the guidance of species who have walked this path before you. Kim looked at the display, then at the ambassador, then at the other humans in the room. President Lee Soo-jin was watching him carefully, waiting for his response. The weight of speaking for all humanity pressed down on him like a mountain. The ambassador leaned forward slightly, his crystal form catching the light from the windows. Dr. Kim Dae-ho, he said, what is humanity's answer? Will you join the Galactic Council and take your place among the civilized species of the galaxy? Dr. Kim thought about everything. He had heard about the perfect peace and prosperity the Council offered. He thought about the elimination of war and poverty and disease. He thought about the technologies that could solve all of humanity's problems. Then he thought about the price, the loss of independence, the surrender of the right to make their own choices, the requirement to live according to rules made by others, to think thoughts approved by alien overseers, to become just another member species in someone else's vision of perfection. He looked at the ambassador, whose eyes had shifted to an expectant golden color. He looked at his fellow humans who were waiting for him to accept this incredible offer. He looked out the window at the city of Seoul, where millions of people were going about their daily lives, unaware that their future was being decided in this room. Dr. Kim took a deep breath and gave the most honest answer he could think of. No. He said simply, thank you for the offer, but no. The silence in the meeting room stretched on like a frozen moment in time. Ambassador Veltar stood perfectly still, his crystalline body flickering through colors that Dr. Kim had never seen before, red, orange, purple, and then a deep black that seemed to absorb all the light around it. The other aliens in the delegation began making soft musical sounds that reminded Dr. Kim of wind chimes in a storm. No. The ambassador finally repeated the word as if he had never heard it before in his 3,000 years of life. No, you say no to the Galactic Council. Dr. Kim nodded calmly. Yes, we appreciate everything you have offered us, but humanity chooses to remain independent. We will find our own way among the stars without joining your council. The ambassador took a step backward, and his body began to pulse with rapid flashes of light. The other aliens moved closer to him as if they were trying to comfort or support their leader. Dr. Kim could see that something fundamental had been broken in their understanding of how the universe worked in 3 millennia of galactic diplomacy. The ambassador said slowly, no species has ever refused membership in the council. Every civilization we have encountered has eagerly accepted our guidance, our protection, our wisdom. How can you turn away from perfection because it's not our perfection? Dr. Kim replied, we prefer to make our own mistakes and learn from them rather than live by someone else's rules. We thank you for coming here, and we hope we can be friends, but we will not be your subjects. President Lee Soo-jin stepped forward slightly, ready to support Dr. Kim if the aliens became hostile, but the ambassador just stood there, his colors shifting wildly as he tried to process what had happened. His entire worldview had been built on the assumption that all intelligent species would naturally want to join the council when offered the chance. The delegation left Earth that same day, their crystal ships rising into the sky without ceremony or fanfare. As they departed, Dr. Kim watched from the window, wondering what consequences humanity's refusal might bring. He had spoken for his entire species, and now he could only hope that he had chosen correctly. News of the rejection spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Within days, every species in the Galactic Council knew that the humans had said no. The reaction was immediate and chaotic. On the water world of Aquanus, General Thrix called an emergency meeting of his military advisors. The fish-like beings floated in their command chambers, their gills fluttering with agitation as they discussed this unprecedented situation. Captain Lee, So Young, the human who had left Earth years earlier and now served as a cultural consultant, tried to explain her people's decisions. General Thrix, you must understand that humans do not bow to authority. Easily, she said, my people have a saying that it is better to die on your feet than live on your knees. They would rather struggle and fail on their own than succeed under someone else's control. But that makes no sense, General Thrix replied, his scaled head shaking from side to side. The council offers them everything they could ever want: advanced technology, unlimited energy, sources, protection from hostile forces. Why would any species choose hardship over prosperity? Because they believe that freedom is worth more than comfort, Captain Lee replied, and as she said it, she realized that somewhere deep inside she agreed with them. She had left Earth seeking adventure among the stars, but she had found only a comfortable cage. Meanwhile, on the mining world of Kepler 438b, something extraordinary was happening. The insectoid workers who had labored in the deep mines for generations without complaint were holding their first strike in recorded history. Their queen hive mind Zara had heard about the humans' refusal to submit to galactic authority, and it had planted a seed in her collective consciousness. If the humans can say no to the council, she declared to her millions of workers, then we can say no to unfair working conditions. We demand better pay, safer equipment, and the right to choose our own working hours. The strike spread to 17 mining worlds. Within a week, insectoid workers everywhere began questioning why they had to accept dangerous conditions and low wages just because the council mediated their employment contracts. The economic impact was immediate as production of rare minerals ground to a halt in the merchant world of Zephyr Prime. The timid Zephyrian traders were having similar thoughts. For centuries, they had accepted council regulations that limited where they could trade, what they could sell, and how much profit they could make. But if humans could reject the entire council system, then maybe the traders could reject unfair trade restrictions. Captain Park Yoon-ji, a Zephyrian merchant who had always followed every rule to the letter, made a decision that shocked her entire family. She loaded her ship with goods that the council had forbidden her to trade, and set course for systems that were supposed to be off limits. If the authorities tried to stop her, she would give them the same answer the humans had given. Noth warrior clans of Drakmor had always chafed under council restrictions on their expansion into unclaimed territories. They were a proud species with a long history of conquest and exploration, but the council had forced them to limit their activities to maintain galactic peace. When news of humanity's rejection reached their homeworld, the clan leaders gathered for a great council of war. "We have been fools," declared War Chief Jin Ho, his scarred face twisted with anger. "We gave up our freedom for the promise of peace, but what good is peace if it means we cannot live as our ancestors did? The humans have shown us the way. We do not need the Council's permission to claim new worlds." Within days, Drakmor fleets were moving toward the Galactic Rim, preparing to establish colonies in territories that the Council had declared off limits. They sent a message to the Council leadership that consisted of a single word copied from the human diplomatic response: "No." Back on Earth, Dr. Park Min-ho had been appointed head of the newly formed Galactic Relations Department. His job was to monitor the consequences of humanity's rejection and prepare for whatever might come next. What he discovered both amazed and terrified him. Galactic communication networks were buzzing with activity as species after species began questioning their relationship with the Council. Some were demanding renegotiation of their membership terms, others were threatening to withdraw entirely. A few were already following the human example and declaring complete independence. Dr. Park received a secret transmission from Captain Lee, So Young, warning him that the situation was becoming dangerous for humanity. The Council was beginning to see them not just as a stubborn species but as a threat to the entire galactic order. "You don't understand," she transmitted. "The whole system is built on the idea that the Council knows best, and that all species will eventually accept their authority. If other civilizations start following your example, the entire structure could collapse. They are talking about taking military action to stop the spread of what they are calling the human infection on the Council." Homeworld emergency sessions were being held around the clock. Ancient beings who had not spoken in centuries were being awakened to deal with the crisis. How could one word from one species threaten the stability they had worked so hard to create? The Council had faced rebellions before, but they had always been violent uprisings that could be crushed with superior firepower. This was different. This was an idea spreading from mind to mind across the galaxy, the simple concept that obedience was a choice, not a requirement. Veltar found himself at the center of the growing storm. As the one who had personally heard the human rejection, he was considered an expert on this new form of resistance, but he had no answers to give his superiors. He had spent his entire life believing that all rational beings would naturally choose order over chaos, peace over conflict. Now, he watched helplessly as that belief crumbled around him. The word "no" was echoing across the galaxy, spoken in 1,000 different languages by species who had forgotten they had the right to refuse, and it all started with one human scientist who had politely declined an invitation to paradise. The Galactic Council was about to learn that some ideas once spoken could never be taken back. Captain Cho Jae-min stood on the bridge of the Earth defense vessel, indomitable, watching the scanner displays that showed the edge of their solar system. 3 months had passed since Dr. Kim Dae-ho had spoken the word that changed everything, and now the consequences were heading toward Earth at faster-than-light speed. The Indomitable was not much to look at compared to the beautiful crystal ships of the aliens. It was built from Earth steel and powered by fusion reactors that humanity we had developed on their own without any help from advanced galactic civilizations. The ship was smaller than a Council destroyer and carried weapons that were primitive by galactic standards. But it was crewed by humans, and that made all the difference. Park Yoon-ji worked at the sensor station, her fingers dancing over controls as she tracked the massive fleet approaching from deep space. "Sir," she called out, "we are detecting 47 Council ships, including their flagship Harmony Eternal. They will reach the outer planets in 6 hours. Captain Cho nodded grimly. He had expected this day would come. The reports from across the galaxy had been getting worse every week. More species were declaring independence from Council authority. Trade routes were breaking down as merchants refused to follow Council regulations. The Drakmor clans had established 3 new colonies in forbidden territories, and the insectoid workers were still on Khan. Earth President Lee Soo-jin was meeting with her advisors in the Crisis Command Center deep beneath Seoul. The room was filled with screens showing defensive positions around the planet and the small fleet of ships that humanity had managed to build in the past few months. It was not nearly enough to stop a full council attack, but it was all they had. Dr. Kim Dae-ho sat at the conference table looking older than he had 3 months ago. The weight of his decision pressed down on him every day as reports came in of the chaos spreading across the galaxy. I never intended to start a galactic war, he said quietly. I just wanted us to remain free. You did the right thing, President. Lee replied. Even if we lose this battle, at least we will lose as free people. The council offered us a cage made of gold, but it was still a cage. Engineer Han Min-soo burst into the room carrying a datapad filled with technical readings from the approaching council fleet. Madam President, he said breathlessly, I have been analyzing their ship's signatures, and I found something important. All of their technology is networked together. Every ship, every weapon, every communication system follows the same protocols. They have made themselves vulnerable by connecting everything. President Lee leaned forward. What do you mean their strength is also their weakness? Han explained. They achieve perfect coordination because all their systems talk to each other, but that means we might be able to disrupt their entire fleet if we can interfere with their network. They have never fought an enemy that was not part of their system. Meanwhile, in space, Captain Lee So-young was making the most difficult decision of her life. She had served the Council faithfully for years after leaving Earth, but watching the preparations for the attack on her home world had awakened something inside her that she thought was dead, the part of her that was still human. She sat in her quarters aboard the Council ship Eternal Wisdom, staring at a picture of Earth that she had kept hidden in her personal belongings. For years she had told herself that she had made the right choice by leaving, that she had found something better among the stars. But now she realized that what she had found was not better, just different. Captain Lee activated her personal communicator and sent a coded message to Earth. This is Lee So-young of the ship Eternal Wisdom, she transmitted. I am coming home. Her message reached Earth just as the Council fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel. At the edge of the solar system, Ambassador Veltar stood on the bridge of the Harmony, Eternal, looking at the small blue planet that had caused so much trouble. Such a tiny world, he thought, to cause such massive disruption. The ambassador had been given command of the military operation against Earth with orders to force humanity into submission or remove them as a threat to galactic stability. He did not like the assignment, but he understood its necessity. The idea of saying no to authority was spreading like a plague across the galaxy, and it had to be stopped at its source. General Thrix floated in his command tank aboard the Aquinas battlecruiser Deep Current, watching the tactical displays that showed Earth and its pathetic defenses. Look at them, he said to his staff. They have 12 ships against our 47. This will be over quickly. But even as he spoke, doubt crept into his mind. Reports from the homeworld told of continued strikes and protests among his own people. The Aquinas workers were demanding the right to choose their own representatives, rather than accept council-appointed leaders. If Earth fell, would the rebellion end, or would it just inspire more resistance? In the mining world of Kepler 438b hive mind, Zara felt the tremors of change through her collective consciousness. Her workers had been following the news from Earth with growing excitement, and when word came that the Council fleet had reached the human home system, they stopped working entirely. If the humans lose today, one of her drones said, then we will know that resistance is hopeless. But if they win, even against such odds, then we will know that freedom is possible for everyone. Similar conversations were happening on thousands of worlds across the galaxy. Species that had been loyal council members for centuries found themselves hoping that the small blue planet would somehow survive the coming battle, not because they loved humanity, but because humanity represented something they had forgotten. They wanted the right to choose. Back in Earth orbit, Captain Cho received an unexpected transmission on a frequency that only humans used. This is Captain Lee So-young requesting permission to join the defense fleet, she said. I am defecting from council service and offering my ship to Earth. Captain Cho stared at the communication display in amazement. Captain Lee, he replied, you do not have to do this. You will be branded a traitor by the council. I already am a traitor, she answered. I betrayed my own species when I left Earth years ago. Now I want to make it right. Her council ship, the Swift Harmony, broke formation and accelerated toward Earth. The other council vessels opened fire on her immediately, but she had disabled her transponder and was using human communication codes. The council ships could not target her effectively without risking damage to their own coordination network. As Captain Lee's ship reached Earth orbit, the battle lines were drawn on one side, the massive council fleet with weapons that could crack planets and shields that had never been breached. On the other side, 13 human ships and 1 defector, carrying crews that had never fought a space battle but refused to surrender. Veltar opened a communication channel to Earth. This is your final warning, he broadcast. Surrender now and accept council authority or face the consequences of your defiance. Your word no has poisoned the minds of lesser species across the galaxy. This cannot be allowed to continue. President Lee Soo-jin responded from the surface of Earth. This is Earth. We do not surrender. We do not bow. We do not accept the rule of those who would cage us. If you want to destroy us for choosing freedom, then You will have to live with that choice for the rest of your lives. The ambassador closed the channel and turned to his weapons officer. Fire, he commanded. The battle for humanity began. The first shots of the battle lit up space around Earth like a deadly fireworks display. The Council fleet fired in perfect coordination, their energy beams converging on the human ships with mathematical precision, but Captain Cho had been expecting this, and his fleet scattered like leaves in a storm, each ship moving in a different direction at the same time. Lieutenant Kim Da-yoon worked frantically at her weapons station aboard the Indomitable, watching as the beautiful alien ships maintained their flawless formation. They move like dancers, she said to Captain Cho, but dancers following the same choreography every time. Captain Cho smiled grimly. Then let's teach them some new steps. He activated the ship-wide communication system. All ships. This is Cho. Implement Chaos Protocol now. Engineer Hon Min-soo's plan went into action immediately. Every human ship began broadcasting random signals on every frequency they could access. The signals were meaningless noise, but they flooded the communication channels that the Council ships used to coordinate their movements. Suddenly, the perfect alien formation began to wobble as individual ships lost contact with their command network. On the bridge of the Harmony, Eternal Ambassador Veltar watched in confusion as his fleet started making mistakes. Ships fired at empty space because their targeting systems could not communicate properly. Two Council destroyers nearly collided when their navigation computers received conflicting instructions. How is this possible? He demanded of his technical staff. We have the most advanced coordination systems in the galaxy. The humans are using chaos against us. Sir, his chief engineer reported, they are not trying to hack our systems. They are just making so much noise that our systems cannot hear each other. It is like trying to have a conversation during a thunderstorm. But the real shock came when the first Council ship took damage. The human ship Defiant had managed to get close to a Council cruiser and hit it with everything they had. The alien ship's shields flickered and failed under the concentrated fire, and the beautiful crystal hull cracked open. Like an egg, General Thrix felt his blood turn cold as he watched the impossible happen. In 3,000 years, no one had successfully damaged a Council warship in battle. The technology gap was supposed to be too great for primitive species to overcome. Yet somehow the humans had done it on his homeworld. Billions of Aquanus workers were watching the battle through emergency broadcasts. When they saw the Council ship take damage, they began cheering in the streets. For the first time in their lives, they were seeing proof that the Council was not invincible. Captain Lee So-young piloted her captured Council ship into the heart of the battle, using her knowledge of alien tactics to help the human fleet. She targeted the coordination nodes on Council ships, the weak points that she had learned about during her years of service. Each hit disrupted their network a little more. The battle raged for hours, with neither side able to gain a clear advantage. The Council had superior weapons and shields, but the humans had something the aliens could not understand. They had the ability to adapt and improvise in real time. Every time the Council ships found a new tactic, the human crews found a way to counter it. Park Min-ho monitored the battle from Earth, receiving reports from across the galaxy that filled him with amazement. The Drakmor clans had officially declared war on the Council and were attacking Council bases in 3-star systems. The Zephyrian merchants had formed their own trade alliance and were refusing to follow Council regulations. Even some member species of the Council itself were demanding autonomy. In Kepler 438b hive mind, Zara made a decision that would change galactic history forever. She ordered her workers to seize control of the mining operations and declare independence from Council authority. We are no longer slaves, she broadcast to the galaxy. We choose freedom. The word was spreading faster than the Council could contain it. No was being spoken in 1,000 different languages by species who had never questioned authority before. The rebellion was no longer about Earth, it was about the right of every being to choose their own path. Ambassador Veltar realized that he was not just fighting a military battle, he was fighting an idea, and ideas could not be destroyed with weapons. Even if he conquered Earth, the concept of saying no would continue to spread across the galaxy. The damage was already done. In desperation, he ordered his fleet to focus all their fire on Earth itself. If he could not stop the rebellion by defeating the human fleet, then he would end it by destroying the planet where it started. The massive energy weapons of the Council fleet turned toward the blue world below, but as the ships prepared to fire, something extraordinary happened. Ships from the observer fleets that had been watching the battle moved to intercept the Zephyrian merchants. The Drakmor warriors, the Aquanus rebels, and dozens of other species positioned themselves between the Council fleet and Earth. We will not allow you to destroy them, transmitted Captain Park Yoon-ji from her Zephyrian merchant vessel. These humans have given us something we had forgotten we possessed. They have given us back our voices. The Council fleet found itself surrounded not by enemies but by former allies who refused to stand aside and watch genocide. The coordination network that had been their greatest strength became their greatest weakness as conflicting orders and countermand flooded their systems. Captain Lee So-young broadcast on all frequencies to both sides of the battle. This is not about humans anymore, she said. This is about the right to say no, to live free, to choose our own destiny. The Council offered us peace, but it was the peace of the grave. They offered us prosperity, But it was the prosperity of slaves. Her words echoed across the galaxy, carried by the same communication networks that the Council used to maintain control on 1,000 worlds. Beings who had never heard of Earth began to understand what the battle was really about. It was not about technology or territory. It was about the most basic right of any intelligent being, the right to choose. Young Christian nobles broke ranks with their own government and joined the rebellion. Workers on industrial worlds walked away from their jobs. Entire star systems declared independence from Council authority. The perfect order that had existed for 3 millennia was crumbling, and it had all started with one simple word. Ambassador Veltar stood on his bridge watching his fleet lose cohesion as more and more ships switched sides or simply stopped following orders. The battle for Earth was no longer a military operation. It had become a symbol of something larger than any single planet or species. He opened a communication channel to the human fleet and spoke the words that would end the battle. "This is Ambassador Veltar of the Galactic Council. We are withdrawing from Earth's space." The silence that followed was deafening. Then Captain Cho responded, "On behalf of humanity, Ambassador, we did not want this war. We only wanted to remain free. If you are willing to talk, we are willing to listen." The war was over, but the revolution was just beginning. 6 months after the battle for Earth, the galaxy was a very different place. Ambassador Veltar sat in what had once been the Grand Council chamber but was now called the Assembly of Free Worlds. The crystal walls that had once reflected only the light of Council authority now sparkled with the colors of dozens of independent species who had come together not as subjects but as equals. Kim Dae-ho stood at the center of the chamber addressing delegates from across the galaxy. The scientist who had started it all with a simple no looked tired but satisfied as he spoke about the new order that was emerging from the chaos of revolution. "We never wanted to destroy your civilization," he said to the assembled delegates. "We only wanted the freedom to build our own. The galaxy is big enough for many different ways of life, many different choices about how to organize society." Captain Cho Jae-min commanded a fleet that was no longer just human ships. Zephyrian merchants, Drakmor warriors, Aquanus rebels, and even former council vessels flew together under a new banner that showed not conquest or submission but cooperation between equals. Each ship maintained its own traditions and methods, but they worked together when facing common threats. President Lee Soo-jin had been elected as the first speaker of the Assembly of Free Worlds, not because she ruled over the other species, but because her world had been the first to say no to galactic tyranny. Earth had become a symbol of independence, and humans had found themselves in the unexpected role of teachers, showing other species how to govern themselves. The changes had not been easy or peaceful. The collapse of the old council system had caused economic disruption, trade, wars, and conflicts between species who had different ideas about freedom. But slowly a new stability was emerging based on voluntary cooperation rather than forced compliance. Captain Lee So-young had returned to Earth as an ambassador, helping to negotiate treaties between human space and the various alien governments that had formed after the council dissolved. She had found her way home, not just to her planet but to her people and her principles. And Kepler 438b hive mind Zara ruled over the first independent insectoid nation in galactic history. Her workers no longer labored in dangerous mines for the benefit of distant masters. Instead, they had formed cooperatives that shared both the work and the profits of their mining operations. The galaxy still needed their rare minerals, but now they were paid fair prices by free traders. The Drakmor clans had established a dozen new colonies in territories that the council had forbidden, but they had learned to negotiate with neighboring species rather than simply conquering them. War Chief Jin Ho had discovered that voluntary alliances were often stronger than conquered territories. General Thrix had retired from military service and returned to Aquanus to help establish the first elected government in his world's history. The transition had been difficult, as his people learned to make decisions for themselves rather than accepting orders from above. But they were learning, and that was what mattered. The Zephyrian merchants had created a new trade federation that operated without the restrictive regulations of the old council. Captain Park Yoon-ji now commanded a fleet of merchant vessels that could trade freely with any world that welcomed them. Prosperity flowed along new routes as species discovered the benefits of voluntary exchange. Engineer Han Min-soo had become famous throughout the galaxy, not for inventing new weapons but for developing communication systems that allowed different species to coordinate without surrendering their independence. His networks carried not orders from central authority, but information that allowed each world to make its own informed choices. The Christian Empire had changed. Young nobles like Kor then had led a peaceful revolution that transformed their rigid hierarchy into a more flexible system that allowed for individual expression while maintaining their cultural identity. The crystal cities still gleamed with rainbow light, but now that light reflected the diversity of opinion rather than uniform conformity. Park Min-ho established the first galactic university where beings from different worlds could come to learn from each other. The curriculum included not just science and technology but also philosophy and history, with special attention paid to the importance of individual rights and democratic governance. The old council homeworld had been abandoned by its government and was now a museum where visitors could see the monuments to the failed attempt at galactic unity through force. The empty halls echoed with the footsteps of tourists who came to learn about the dangers of sacrificing freedom for the promise of perfect order. Ambassador Veltar had requested asylum on Earth, where he spent his time writing a history of the Council and the revolution that brought it down. He had come to understand that the real weakness of the old system was not its technology or military might, but its inability to adapt to new ideas. I believed that we were bringing order to chaos, he wrote in his memoirs, but I now see that we were bringing death to life. True order cannot be imposed from above. It must grow from the choices made by free beings. The new galactic civilization was messier than the old one. There were disagreements and conflicts, and sometimes violence broke out between species with different values. But there was also something that had been missing for 3,000 years. There was growth and change, and the constant possibility that tomorrow might be different from today. Trade flowed more freely than ever before as merchants were no longer restricted by bureaucratic regulations. Innovation exploded as species that had been forced to follow standard procedures were free to experiment with new approaches. Art and culture flourished as different worlds shared their unique perspectives without fear of censorship. The galaxy had learned that diversity was not a problem to be solved but a strength to be celebrated. Each species brought its own gifts to the common store of knowledge and wisdom. The humans contributed their stubborn independence and adaptability. The Drakmor offered their courage and honor. The Aquanis shared their cooperation and unity. The Christian provided their beauty and precision. Years passed, and the memory of the old council began to fade into history. Children grew up on worlds where freedom was taken for granted, where the idea of asking permission from distant rulers seemed as strange as worshipping the weather. But the older generation remembered, and they made sure the story was not forgotten. They told their children about the day when everything changed, about the human scientist who looked at the most powerful force in the galaxy and said the one word that brought it all down. They told them about the battles fought not for conquest but for the right to choose. They told them about the price of freedom and the courage required to defend it. They made sure that the children understood the most important lesson of all, that any being anywhere has the right to say no, to refuse, to bow, to accept hardship rather than surrender their dignity, that freedom is not given by governments or councils or empires. It is claimed by individuals who have the courage to stand up and speak for themselves. The word that had shaken the galaxy was still being spoken on countless worlds in thousands of languages. No to tyranny, no to oppression, no to an idea that safety was worth more than liberty, and as long as beings remembered that simple word, the galaxy would remain free. Kim Daeho died peacefully in his sleep 20 years after first contact, surrounded by friends from dozens of different worlds. His last words were spoken to his human assistant, who asked if he had any regrets about the choice he had made. No, he whispered with a smile, and passed into history, knowing that he had helped set the galaxy free.